Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. This is Deb McBride, and I am recording this in now dark Escazú, Costa Rica, on Sunday, the 9th of November in the year 2025. So, lots to talk about. I did my Q&A the other night, and it was very lovely. We talked mostly about astrology. And if you are interested in obtaining the Q&A and seeing if maybe one of your questions was answered, we talked a lot about Neptune and where Neptune is and why things are the way they are, and Neptune's big cycle and all. But if you are interested, you can write to me, info@thegoldenastrologer.com or deb@debmcbride.com, and you can get it for $25 because that's what it costs to attend. And I welcome you to do that. But also, you should know that I am going to be talking about next year. This is 2026, the Rebellion of Fire and Air, and it will be on Tuesday of December 2nd. Tuesday, December 2nd, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you are interested in that, it's only $55. You can go to my website, thegoldenastrologer.com, and sign up for that. And it is under the book online category. So you'll sort through the appointments, which you can also book, astrology, Reiki, and everything. And then you can also book under the events, which is the Rebellion of Fire and Air. It's also on my blog page, which is called Astrologer's Thoughts. So the link directly to there is on my blog page, on the last blog that I wrote. And you can also write to me at the same email and get the information. I can send you the link. I actually did 4 lectures this week. I did one last Sunday for Internations. I did one on Monday for my alchemy group. I did the Q&A on Wednesday, and then I met with my New Vision group and talked about the Reiki that I do, the 5D Lemurian Reiki, and that went very well and very lovely, and people were interested, and it was a lot of fun. So that was great. In the meantime, we've got some retrograde action happening here. So the first thing is that on Friday, Uranus went back into Taurus, and I mentioned this last week. It went at 9:22 p.m. Eastern Time, and this is yet another outer planet at the end of a sign, changing signs back and forth. So it left Gemini, where it's been since mid this year, and then it stepped back into Taurus. So it's at 29 Taurus. And it's going to be here till it goes back into Gemini at the end of April. And then it goes into Gemini for the next 7 years. So a lot's happened with the last years since 2018 when Uranus went into Taurus. And this has been an interesting time. You know, Uranus shakes things up wherever it goes. And Taurus doesn't like to be shaken up. Taurus likes comfort. Taurus likes to be in, the security zone. Taurus likes its creature comforts, its home coziness, its good, yummy food on the table, all its comfort food on the table, the mashed potatoes, the spaghetti, all the meatloaf, all of it. And Taurus loves that, they have money in the bank, that they have a roof over their head, that they have a cozy, warm blanket, that they have all the good, yummy things. And so what this is doing is it's creating an entirely different vibe because Uranus throws that into a tailspin. So if your life has been disrupted, if your financial life has been disrupted, if your comfort life and your comfort zone and your security has been disrupted, yes, this is Uranus being in Taurus. Now, we've got more months of this. It's quite a bit. And I really feel like if we are going to understand this and get what we're supposed to get from it, we have to pay attention between now and the end of April and really dig in and understand that something has to be let go of, something in the security zone, something that has been a security for us for a long time is no longer working or needs at least some adjustments. I mean, maybe you just moved into your house and you don't want to sell it. Maybe you have to change jobs. It depends on where Uranus is falling in your astrological chart. Now, if Uranus is falling somewhere in, an angular house, that would be the 1st, the 4th, the 7th, or the 10th, then you're probably going to feel this very strongly because angular houses are generally stronger than the rest of the houses. And so it forces us, especially if it goes over an angle in the angular house, to really shift and change things. Uranus brings different things than what's been in that house before. And so it asks us to look at our lives and make different choices, make different arrangements, create a different environment, work with the energy of Uranus, which is innovative, which is everything else that you don't know. It's asking you to think outside the box. And so now Uranus is back in Taurus, and it's, before it goes into Gemini and we get a double boost of the information age, we have to make the adjustments needed in the house that contains Taurus. And again, Taurus is the most fixed of all the fixed signs. It's the earthiest of all the earth signs, and it does not like change. And if it allows change, it's like incremental, why should I change this? But it's perfectly fine the way it is. But then Uranus shows you where it's not perfectly fine, where the holes in the foundation are. And Taurus is about foundation. So Uranus is letting us see that. Now, when something goes to the end of the sign, like right now it's at 29 degrees Taurus, it's at what we call the anaretic degree. And I always think of that degree as the concentrated juice of that sign. The concentrated, like, boiled down juice of that sign. So now we've got it down. All the water's been removed, and it's the concentrate. It's the coffee at the bottom of the pot after it's been sitting on the burner for a little while. It's when you boil the broth down to its essence, okay? Something's boiled down to its essence at that anaretic degree, and it's the juiciest part of the sign, and it's the end, and it's before we say so long. And Uranus hasn't been in Gemini, and it'll be, the last time when it left Gemini was like 1949, right? So it's the 84-year cycle of Uranus. And people alive today have experienced Uranus and Gemini, and there are people alive today who were born with Uranus and Gemini. And so it's not like Neptune, 165 years, we've never experienced this before. But many people on the planet have not experienced Uranus and Gemini because many people were born after 1949. And so we have to get adjusted to that. And certainly many of us have not experienced Uranus and Taurus because it was before, the war started and everything, or just about when the war started. And, the thing about this is we are now being asked to really look at that Taurus house and make some decisions before we go forward. Everything's going to be new next year. You know that Saturn will go in a new sign. You know that Neptune will go in a new sign. And now Uranus is going in a new sign. And so what that means for you depends on your chart and what it looks like, which I encourage you to either come to my lecture on December 2nd, or at least come to me for a personal private reading, and we'll look at what this means for you. And so Uranus really stirs the pot, and when it's at the end of something, it's going to stir it up even more profoundly and more deeply. So we have to pay attention. Uranus is saying, hey, what is it that you want to change? Where do you want to be innovative? What do you want to do in that area of your chart that contains Taurus? And we're going to see things change in the financial world, the banking world. There'll probably be some rock and roll before Uranus leaves and then goes into Gemini. So, meanwhile, Mercury has gone retrograde, and that was at 2:02 p.m. Eastern Time today. And it will be retrograde until the 29th of November, which is on Thanksgiving weekend if you celebrate Thanksgiving in your region of the world. That's a special weekend because Saturn will go direct also that weekend. So that's a double whammy weekend, okay? But that's weeks away, so we'll talk about it then. Mercury went retrograde at 6 degrees of Sagittarius. Where did we hear that before? We heard that last December. Okay, so this is an interesting dynamic. Last December, Mercury was retrograde, or it went retrograde in November and sorted itself out in December. And when it went direct mid-December last year, 15th, 16th of December, depending on where you are, it was at 6 degrees Sagittarius. So it was retrograde later in Sag, came back to the middle of Sag, went back to 6 degrees and turned around and went direct. And now it's picked up the retrograde at 6 degrees Sagittarius and is going to go back into Scorpio, not today, not tomorrow, but in the coming days and weeks, and it'll go back in Scorpio, and that's where it will go direct. But this is something that is picking up the story from last December. So I already felt it. I already felt it. The story, where were we in December of last year, mid-December, 10 days or so before Christmas? Where were you? What was going on for you? And what did it feel like? Because I feel like this is continuing a story or picking up a thread of a story since last December. And that's really important because I thought that was a particularly powerful Mercury retrograde. And it was powerful also because Mars had gone retrograde on the 6th of December. And that was at like 6 degrees Leo. So they were trining one another. But that was a strong time. That was a very strong time. And there was a strong signature in that moment. And so this is something we want to pay attention to. Again, pay attention. I'm saying this a lot tonight. Pay attention to that experience of having Mercury going retrograde in this degree that it left off last December. So it's continuing a story or reflecting back or asking us to look again at the matters that we were contending with last year. What did you dredge up from your unconscious last year? What in the area of knowledge and wisdom, and that's Sagittarian keywords, did you discover at that time? And what's sort of shaking things up now? Mercury doesn't go retrograde in a vacuum. There's other things going on. And so also, it's interesting that Uranus went back into Taurus is backwards, and then Uranus is going to keep going backwards, and then Mercury joined it backwards, and then when it goes direct, Saturn's going direct. So it's sort of bracketed by these planets that are moving in the same direction at the same time. Like when Mercury's ready to go direct, Saturn's going to be going direct. So what does this tell you about your life right now? And Mercury is in Sag, so that's about travel, that's about long distances, it's about education, it's about wisdom and higher knowledge, it's about learning, it's about philosophy. What do you believe in? It's about how you were raised philosophically, if you were raised philosophically at all. Did your parents believe in something? Was it strict? Was it not? Was it loose? Was it nothing? Was it something big and deep? And did it affect you? And did it give you something that you use in your life every day, or did it make you rebel? So it's always about that sign that we're in, okay? Like I just explained Taurus, and now we're talking about Sagittarius, which is very different from Taurus. But Sagittarius is really something where we want some freedom. We want expansiveness. It's Jupiter's sign. And so Sagittarius is asking us to be really free and open and spontaneous. And so are you having a little trouble with being spontaneous? Because Mercury's stopping there. Mercury is making an indecision, perhaps, about spontaneousness, or maybe because Mercury's making an indecision, it doesn't feel spontaneous at all. It feels like you're overthinking it. Here's a funny story. Last time Mercury went retrograde, Mercury retrograde, the truth comes out and things get sorted out. And when we sort things out during Mercury retrograde, maybe you have to go fix something with the Municipalidad de Escazú. Maybe you have to go to the bank and sort something out. Maybe you got something in the mail that says, oh, this is messed up. We need other piece of information from you. So I was having a problem earlier this year where the captions on my Instagram were showing up in German. Okay, I set them on English, and I was looking at them on my page, and they were in German. And not only were they in German, I was scrolling through it. I saw them in German, then I sort of ignored it. And then I came back and they were still in German, and I was trying to fix it and it didn't work because it was still coming up in German. But then I started to spend some time with it and look at it. and see that it not only was in German, but if I scrolled back far enough, it was in French. So this is, when I make a video or something, the captions below were not in English as I set them to, and I turned it off, I turned it back on, I made it back in English. It was German, it was French, I found Spanish, then I saw it in Japanese, and then one very curly Q language that I determined was the Thai language of Siamese. And I just said, I just don't understand this. And so I was asking my friends, is this showing up in Siamese for you? Is it in German for you? And they're saying, no, it's in English. And everybody's telling me, no, it's in English. And I'm like, okay, then it's my phone and it's my Instagram doing this to me, only me. And this would only happen to me. And despite my efforts to sort it out through, flipping off and on the subtitles and the language and everything, it was still coming up in strange languages. So I sort of gave up. And then magically during Mercury retrograde, it sorted itself out. And now it's in English, and it stayed in English. And if I scroll back to everything, it's in English. And I don't know how that happened. It just sorted itself out. And so that was the magical component of Mercury retrograde, okay? So I just thought I'd say that was particularly hilarious. Don't know why it happened, don't know how it happened, but it sorted itself out, and I don't know how that happened either. The magic of Mercury retrograde. So this week on Tuesday, Jupiter is going retrograde. And so Jupiter's in the sign of Cancer where it is exalted. But Jupiter, as I just mentioned, is the ruling planet of Sagittarius. So now what we have going on is that Mercury is in Jupiter's sign, and Mercury's gone retrograde in Jupiter's sign, and now Jupiter is going retrograde. So something about travel, freedom, awareness, consciousness, openness, education, philosophy, belief systems, all of this is getting stirred up right now. Because Mercury rules the 3rd house and Jupiter rules the 9th house. And those are opposite houses from one another. Mercury is where we go to elementary school and high school. Jupiter is where we go to college and graduate school. And Mercury is sort of the local travel, and Jupiter is the far travel, the distance travel. So all of this they're talking to each other, even though they're not aspecting each other in the zodiac chart right now. They're not aspecting one another, but they are speaking a similar language right now. So an interesting thing. So Mercury is in Sagittarius, which is disposed of by Jupiter, which is in Cancer, which is disposed of by the moon. And as I speak, the moon is in Cancer. But it won't be in Cancer past tomorrow because it's going into Leo tomorrow at 12:34 p.m. Eastern Time, the 10th. And so what we've got here is an interesting little ring disposition of Mercury, Jupiter, and the moon. And the moon it just stops there in Cancer because it rules Cancer. And so there's a couple of dispositions like this right now where Mars is in Sagittarius and it goes then to Jupiter, and then Jupiter goes to the moon, and moon is in its own sign. So this is a dynamic between Mars and Mercury and Jupiter and the moon. And so there's conversation, there's elevated thinking, and there's sensitivity and emotion. And there's this dynamic between home and travel, and comfort zone and discomfort. And Mars and Mercury are very close to one another. They've been close for a while, but Mercury moved ahead in Sag, but Mars is catching up. And actually what they're going to do is they're going to conjunct again on Wednesday at 6:15 p.m. Now remember, a few weeks ago, Mars and Mercury were conjunct in Scorpio, and I said they were going to do this again, and here they are, they're in Sag. But they're in this dynamic with Jupiter, and they're in this dynamic with the moon right now. And so this is an interesting thing, because when we look at Jupiter, it's a big planet, and it rules Sagittarius, which does big things, or wants big things, or likes to dive in and do something big, and they're more spontaneous. And it's in Cancer, and it's a funny thing. It's exalted in Cancer, right? So what does this tell us? Jupiter likes the qualities of growth, abundance, and wisdom. Cancer embodies nurturing, emotional depth, home. So this is where Jupiter can express its full potential and creates a supportive environment for development and growth. So Cancerian energy is very growth oriented, right? And Jupiter likes anything that's going to help us grow and anything that's going to expand us. So we can go deeper because Cancerian energy is deep. It wants us to go deep, emotionally deep. And so we can go deeper when Jupiter's there. And so this is a very interesting dynamic because you would really think that these qualities are at odds, that all that travel that Jupiter loves to do and exploring other cultures and, other nationalities and lands and places that are not home, that are foreign, and yet, when it's in Cancer, it really taps into that growth quality and emotional depth. So the length of time that Mercury and Mars are going to be in Sagittarius, they are going to be disposed of by Jupiter over there in Cancer. So I feel like that's going to not let Mercury and Mars be frivolous in Sagittarius and actually ponder and be introspective and contemplating about one's emotions, past, feelings, family, stuff like that. So that's something to pay attention to. And also, Jupiter, while it's turning retrograde in the next few days, is going to be in this very close, very nice aspect with Saturn in Pisces. So it's going to be a trine, and they are going to be trining each other for a while because Jupiter's going to be stopping in the sky, and Saturn is retrograde in Pisces. So the two of them have some support of one another, and that's a good thing. And hopefully what this is going to do is that Jupiter, in its abundance and its generosity and blessings, is going to really support that Saturn Neptune arrangement at the end of Pisces and say, hey, look, we're moving forward. Yes, we're touching on the moments of the past, and especially with Neptune, at the end of Pisces, it's been there for 12 years. Really, we want to sort of tie up this old business and really look at things and move forward. And so perhaps this is Jupiter's way of supporting us in the wind down of these two planets at the end of Pisces that are ending a very big cycle together, a very big cycle. Okay. So I like that Jupiter is in this relationship with Saturn. It kind of keeps Saturn out of our face. It keeps Saturn out of trouble, and it keeps us out of trouble with Saturn. And, Jupiter's there saying, don't worry, I got your back. And remember that Saturn and Jupiter were in a dynamic at the end of 2020. Remember, they were conjunct throughout a lot of 2020, but exactly conjunct at the beginning of Aquarius at the end of around December 21st, 2020. And now they're talking to each other. We're still in that cycle. See, that Saturn-Jupiter conjunction takes 20 years. And so the 2020 will then turn into 2040. And so in the meantime, when they talk to each other, it's after this cycle beginning back in 2020. So they were squaring each other last year, and now they're trining each other. And so what information does this have for us, thinking about 2020 and what started at the end of 2020, not all during 2020, but really the end? And how do we look at those moments that we had, and how do they sort of become okay for us right now as Jupiter and Saturn are agreeable? They started a big wheel turning at that point. And now how are we looking at them being agreeable with one another, sort of waving at each other from across the room and being in a very good place with one another? So we think back to the end of 2020 and we say, well, what happened then? And what was really the moment of back then? What stood out for you in that moment? I know what stood out for me in that moment. But they are now talking very nicely to each other. So there's not this rough dynamic where one is trying to outdo the other, where one is trying to be abundant and the other one is contracting, and one is expanding and the other one is saying no, we can't do that. And so they're an interesting pair, and one kind of can't exist without the other, and one tempers the expansion and the other one tempers the too much contraction. And so they are balanced right now. And I think this is important to look at, to be aware of, and to sort of connect within yourself. Where do you feel like that balance of, contraction and expansion is working through you? And sort of Neptune's kind of expansive in its own way too, and it's maybe eroding a little bit of that Saturn edge. But this is a very, very interesting time because that Saturn Neptune is very important. They don't get together very often. The last time, if you've heard me speak about this, the last time they got together was when the Berlin Wall came down, when the USSR dissolved, when all of that was going on in the 90s, and then now they're going to come exactly together at 0 degrees Aries next year, which I'll talk about in my lecture on December 2nd. And Jupiter is supporting them right now. Jupiter is supporting their connection. They are conjunct, like I always say, if you have a baby and they have this Saturn-Neptune configuration, even though they're 4 degrees apart, they're conjunct. And Jupiter's trining them. So Jupiter's saying, okay, what do we know about these two? And what do we glean from this? And where are we taking this next step of big transformation? How do we feel about it? Because Jupiter's asking about how deep we can go emotionally. So it's really important. Now the Sun is going to move into this nice relationship with them too. Remember, the Sun is in Scorpio, and the Sun will trine Jupiter next Sunday the 16th, which is a perfectly lovely aspect. And, for the most part, this is going to be a grand water trine. So it's Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune. But the Sun won't really get into the exactitude of the trine to Saturn until a few days after Jupiter, and then eventually the trine to Neptune right before it goes into Sagittarius. So the Sun will then oppose Uranus. So we've got a lot of dynamics next week, but I'm going to leave them for next week's podcast. What we're looking at is the involvement of a grand trine, a grand water trine, which is supportive of our emotions and gives us time to contemplate and introspect about how we're feeling emotionally. Okay, so that may be stirring in you this week. It'll certainly stir in you the week after. But look at these things. A grand trine in water is a beautiful thing. And if you have a grand trine in water in your chart, you will probably feel this and feel that the dynamic resonates with you, okay? I think it's important. I think it's really important to acknowledge this because Sun and Jupiter don't do this very often, this Sun-Jupiter trine. It comes maybe once a year when the Sun is moving around and Jupiter is in one sign. So this is very lovely, and it's very open, and it invites expansion, but it also invites a lot of wisdom and understanding of where we are emotionally. The Sun is in Scorpio, okay? So we want to go deep. We want to go deep emotionally. And Jupiter also in that nice Cancerian cozy cave there, going deep. And then we have Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. And so there's information in this for us. There's wisdom in this for us. There's a desire to maybe share and express our feelings. And this is something that we want to acknowledge and work with. Now, if you use this energy wisely, you can come away from it feeling emotionally in a better place, okay? It's a trine. These are trines. This is good energy. This means that we should be exploring our emotions with an open state of mind. And we should be open to exploring our emotions, okay? Just the whole fact of being open to exploring our emotions is really important. So feel your feelings, be with your feelings, contemplate your feelings, understand where you're going emotionally, and what does this all bring up for you? Go deep. Don't be afraid to go deep. Feel it. Feel your feelings. And if you're listening to this on Sunday night, you can probably go outside and see the moon and Jupiter conjunct in the sky. if you have a clear night, which we rarely do here. So, so go out there. If you can see the moon and Jupiter, that would be a beautiful thing because they are conjunct in the sign of Cancer. And if you would like to learn more about where this affects you in your astrological chart, then I invite you to book a session with me. And you can do that by going to my website, thegoldenastrologer.com, and clicking book online and booking yourself into my schedule. I am giving this lecture in a few weeks. I really recommend listening to it. I recommend coming. If you can't make it, purchase it and watch it later. There's a lot going on in the early part of next year, and we're changing signs. Everything's changing. And so this was, if you saw my lecture last year, it was the liminal labyrinth, and that's because we had to navigate, and we're still navigating, through the sign changes that these planets are bringing us. And we're in this in-between place. So we're not finished with the journeys that we've been through in these last bunch of years. And these have been long journeys. One of them started in 2012. Another one started in 2018. Another one started in 2023. This is really a lot of changing of the guard, moving into something new. And if you're wondering why you feel stuck and why life doesn't feel like it's progressing as you wish it would, or as you are putting in the effort for it to do, then this is part of the situation. And I highly recommend taking advantage of this lecture and also coming to see me and finding out what's going on for you and how this is going to affect you. You can book a Reiki session with me also, which is lovely, beautiful energy. You can study Reiki with me. I do 3 levels of Reiki. It's a wonderful system. If you'd like to learn more about it, you can write to me at thegoldenastrologer.com, info@thegoldenastrologer.com, deb@debmcbride.com. And if you want to work with me longer term through this whole transition, then I suggest you sign up for expansion mentoring, and you could ask me what that involves and how we go about doing that. And I invite you to write to me about those things as well. Have a beautiful week. Hang in there during this Mercury retrograde, which is always topsy-turvy. Think about last December. Feel into your feelings. And I will see you this week on Instagram, The Golden Astrologer, and on my podcast next Sunday. Have a beautiful week. Thank you for listening. Gratitude to everyone.